After rebirth, Brian has been avoiding our engagement. Later, Diana and I fell into the water at the same time. He picked up Diana without hesitation, and I was saved by a fool passing by. I decided to marry him for his life-saving grace. Everyone was shocked because in the previous life, Brian saved me and fulfilled the engagement with me, but Diana was saved by a second-rate guy in the village. The second-rate guy was a vicious person and kept pestering her. Not long after Diana got married, she jumped into the river and committed suicide. Since then, Brian seemed to have become a different person and was cold and distant toward me. After the reform and opening up, he made a fortune in business, but he planned to make my father bear the crime of corruption and bankrupt the whole family. Facing my questioning, his eyes were full of mockery. Why are you pretending to be innocent now? If you hadn't insisted on the engagement, how could Diana have died so early? She died so tragically. How can you live well? In this life, I chose to let go and fulfill her wishes, but when I covered her with the red veil, I clearly heard him say in a hoarse voice, "I regret it." After I was rescued from the river by a fool, he wanted to marry me. This became the biggest news in the village. Have you heard that Ellie wants to marry that fool? Did he fall into the river, and his brain is full of water? I am afraid that his body has been seen naked, and he has to marry. My best friend Kara was so angry that her face turned blue, but I was calm. Anyway, the result will be the same in the end. It doesn't matter who I marry. It's better to be stupid than to cause my whole family to fall into hell. When Kara heard this, she reached out to touch my forehead. You have a fever and your brain is burned up. You can marry anyone else but a fool. Brian, that damn bastard, left his fiancée alone and was busy saving Diana. Even if you're angry and don't marry Brian, there are so many good young men among our educated youth. Bevis's father is a county cadre, and Victor will soon be recommended to university. Any one of them is better than a fool. Kara knew that Brian and I had an engagement. After Diana fell into the water, she shouted to Brian to save me. In the last life, Brian chose me. When he looked back, Diana had already been rescued by the village's second-rate guy. He hated me for this. I still remember the scene where my father was framed and imprisoned. In this life, he got his wish and rescued Diana. And I would rather have a husband who is purely stupid than a very smart one. Alright. Although Nathan is a little silly, he is very handsome. I won't lose anything if I marry him. Just stop crying. Kara burst into laughter after hearing this, but she still glared at me helplessly. At this time, there were voices outside the door. It sounded like Brian and Diana. Kara stood up with an unhappy face and wanted to go out to chase them away. I smiled and held her back. I have nothing to be ashamed of. If they dare to come, of course I dare to see them. The door curtain was lifted and Diana came over and held my hand. Ellie, everyone in the village said that you were going to marry the fool who saved you. It's all my fault. If I had been more careful, Brother Brian wouldn't have had to rush to save me, and this wouldn't have happened. I slowly raised my eyes and my gaze collided with Brian's unexpectedly. Crossing past and present lives, I met him again. Brian patted Diana's shoulder with pity on his face. Diana, you are too kind. You are the most important person to me. It's none of my business whether others live or die and who they marry. If Brian could express his feelings so frankly in the previous life, I wouldn't have needed him to save me even if I drowned in the river. When Brian pulled me out of the river in the previous life, his eyes were as cold as an ice hole in December. Ellie, you are so cruel that you even dragged Diana into the water to force a marriage. I choked on the water and wanted to explain, but I saw Diana shivering in Brian's coat. Brother Brian's sister Ellie may not have meant it. It was this sentence that froze the last bit of warmth in Brian's eyes. The day after the wedding, he moved his bedding to the educated youth camp. Later, after Diana died, he even painstakingly planned to harm my whole family. Thinking of this, I smiled coldly. This is my private matter, so please don't worry about it. Diana's tears suddenly fell like beads that had broken off the string. She grabbed my wrist and said, Sister Ellie, are you blaming me? I know you were engaged first, but so many people in the village watched Brother Brian rescue me from the river. In love, there is no first come, first served. The one who is not loved is the third party. How about? Let's compete fairly, and don't get married first. The three of us can look around together. Wait until Brother Brian understands his feelings before making a decision. I almost laughed out of anger. The new society allows only monogamy, but she insisted on dragging out the feudal dregs of 2 women and 1 husband to disgust people. I watched them coldly and finally understood that they came here today not to apologize, but to humiliate me and make fun of me as an abandoned woman. Before I could open my mouth, Brian glanced at me contemptuously, as if he was looking at something dirty. Diana, why do you have to say this to her? I only love you in my life, and I think other women are dirty to look at for even a second. A hint of pride flashed across Diana's face, and then she immediately changed to a pitiful expression. Brother Brian, please don't be like this. Sister Ellie is already feeling miserable. I sneered and gently stroked the mandarin ducks embroidered on the wedding dress with my fingertips. Brian is right. Marriage should be faithful. I'm going to marry Nathan soon, and don't want to have any ambiguous involvement with other men. Diana's eyes flashed with surprise. Sister Ellie, are you really willing to marry a fool? What's wrong with a fool? At least a fool won't hurt others or scheme against others. Brian's face turned livid in an instant, and he grabbed Diana's wrist and strode away. Diana staggered behind him, not forgetting to turn around and show me a winner's smile. Kara was so angry that she stamped her feet. This pair of dogs and bitches are clearly here to show off their power. She grabbed the broom and swept the place where Brian had just stood, as if to sweep away all the bad luck he left behind. Brian, Diana, and I attended the collective wedding organized by the production team. I didn't want to make steamed buns to save money, so I took out my savings from the bottom of the box and bought red cloth to sew my wedding dress. The stitches were so fine it seemed as if I was sewing in all the grievances of 2 lives. Suddenly, there was a sound at the village entrance, the ding-ling-ling of a bicycle bell from the most famous matchmaker in the county, Wong. Ellie is so happy. Her loud voice attracted half the village to come and watch the fun. 4 strong young men followed the bicycle, each wearing a brand new blue work suit and carrying a camphorwood box with a big red "she" character on their shoulders. The leading young man held an object covered with red silk very carefully, as if it were something precious. Make way, Wong, the matchmaker, commanded in a hoarse voice. This is a rare item. As soon as the red silk was lifted, the watching villagers immediately became excited. Oh my God, Zelda slapped her thigh and exclaimed, a Shanghai brand sewing machine. 3 turns and 1 ring, all done. Matchmaker Mia counted on her fingers proudly. Forever brand bicycles, Shanghai brand watches, Peony brand radios. She deliberately stretched her voice. These are all hot-selling goods that have just arrived from a county supply and marketing cooperative. More and more villagers gathered and talked nonstop. Hey, didn't you say you were marrying a fool? This is even more extravagant than the weddings of county officials. Tisk, TSK, are you just pretending to be rich? You're using your mother's dowry as a betrothal gift. City people love flowers. Several bachelors in the crowd rubbed their hands in jealousy. If I had known, I would have jumped into the river to save her. This isn't marrying a wife. This is marrying a gold nugget. I was puzzled looking at the betrothal gifts. Before I could ask for clarification, Diana took Brian's arm and squeezed to the front of the crowd. Diana stared at the dazzling array of gifts. A hint of jealousy flashed to her eyes. Sister Ellie, she deliberately raised her voice so everyone around could hear. Children should be considerate of their parents. Even if you marry a fool, there's no need to pretend to be rich and empty out the family savings. She glanced meaningfully at the gifts. These are all debts that need to be repaid. The villagers immediately whispered among themselves and looked at me differently. Tisk, TSK, turns out she is a spendthrift woman. Educated youth from the city, just know how to waste money. I think she's a fool. Otherwise, why would she be willing to spend all her family's wealth to marry a fool? Several bachelors even made sarcastic noises. Oh, I should have pretended to be a fool earlier. Maybe I could have tricked a city girl into marrying me. That's right. This educated young man Ellie might have had his brain damaged by the river water. Everyone around me laughed loudly. Brian stood at the front of the crowd with his arms folded, a sarcastic sneer on his face. Ellie, listen carefully. Diana is the only woman I will marry. As for you, he looked me up and down with contempt, as if inspecting cheap merchandise. Even if you keep pestering me, I can't give you a name. At most. If you insist on not marrying for the rest of your life, after you die, you will be allowed to enter the Bryan family ancestral hall. Diana immediately pretended to be distressed and gently pulled Bryan's sleeve. Brother Bryan, don't say that about Sister Ellie. Sister Ellie is already pitiful enough. Not only was she saved by a fool, but now she has to lose all her belongings. Bryan sneered. Ellie, do you think you can live a good life by marrying a fool? Looking at his silly look, I'm afraid he doesn't even know what to do on your wedding night. You'd be a widow if you marry him, so it's better not to marry. I looked into his eyes coldly. Bryan, whether I marry or not, and who I marry, has nothing to do with an outsider like you. Danny has saved my life. Even if he's stupid, I'm willing to follow him. Bryan sneered contemptuously. Ellie, you must be crazy about men. Thinking a fool is a hot commodity. Diana put on a worried expression. Sister Ellie, marrying a fool must be difficult. If you encounter any difficulties, don't be embarrassed to ask. After all, we are all educated youth, and we will definitely help if we can. After hearing Diana, the villagers nodded and praised. Miss Diana is really kind-hearted. No wonder she found a husband like Accountant Bryan. This is all a blessing. That's right, unlike some people who are arrogant and proud in daily life, but can only marry a fool in the end. What's wrong with a fool? At least a fool is kind-hearted, without so many conspiracies and calculations, and won't cause the family to break up. I glanced coldly at the villagers, pointing fingers. Too lazy to argue, I turned to matchmaker Mia and said, Auntie, let's move the betrothal gifts inside first. Matchmaker Mia winked mysteriously and directed the young men to move the 3 turns and 1 ring to the yard. I held her arm and asked in a low voice, What's the matter with these? Where did Nathan get so much money to buy them? The secret cannot be revealed. Matchmaker Mia smiled with her teeth showing and lowered her voice. You will know tomorrow. On the eve of the collective wedding, I was checking my wedding gown one last time under the lamp when I heard a slight creak from the window frame. I looked up and saw Bryan's figure reflected on the window paper. Ellie, he lowered his voice with the arrogance I knew well. Are you really going to marry that idiot? I sneered. Otherwise, wouldn't this just fulfill your wish? Bryan outside the window was silent for a moment. The moonlight stretched his shadow very long. Finally, he spoke in a hoarse voice. I am not what you think. It's just that if I hadn't saved Diana that day, her life would have been ruined. My heart sank suddenly, and the needle and thread in my hand stopped. So that's it. No wonder he always looked at me with poisonous eyes. No wonder he swam toward Diana without hesitation on the glacier that day. He just lived a new life and got what he wanted. Why did he come to me again? The figure outside the window leaned forward, and his voice suddenly softened. Ellie, listen to me. Marrying that idiot will only hurt you. Just wait until I have arranged Diana's affairs. I won't ignore you. The needle and thread in my hand fell to the ground with a pop. I looked at the blurry figure behind the window paper in shock. A few days ago, he declared in front of the whole village that Diana was the only woman he would marry. He said he would think other women were dirty if he even looked at them for a second. So why was he acting like this now? I tightly grasped the fabric of the wedding dress, wrinkling it into a ball in my palm. The painful memories of my previous life came flooding back. My father's hunched back when he was reported, my mother's blind eyes from crying, and the child who was never born. Thank you for your concern. Whether I live well or not has nothing to do with you. I suddenly opened the window and looked coldly at Bryan's stunned face. He was speechless, but tried to convince me, there is a friendship between us from our youth. I will always reserve a place for you in my heart. Ellie, please don't be angry. Isn't it better to marry that idiot than to follow me? You're right. Even if I really marry an idiot, it's better than having anything to do with you anymore. Bryan's face outside the window suddenly changed. His expression turned horrible. Ellie, don't be ungrateful. You're willing to marry that idiot, right? Okay, don't regret it. The sound of Bryan's footsteps had long disappeared into the night, but my heart was clearer than ever before. The scissors clicked as they cut the last thread. The bad fate of the 2 lives was like this red thread that fell to the ground. It couldn't be continued, and there was no need to continue. The sky was just getting light, and my haggard face was reflected in the mirror. The wedding dress was dazzling red in the morning light, but I hadn't changed into it yet. Although the future was uncertain, I could only use this method to cut off the last possibility with Brian. Ellie. Kara rushed to open the door. Hurry up and take a look at the new big character poster posted by the commune. You'll never guess the true identity of Nathan. I put down the comb in my hand and looked at Kara's cheeks, flushed with excitement. It was the first time she showed such a joyful smile since I decided to marry Nathan. What is his identity? I took the big character poster from her hand, which still smelled of fresh ink. The morning light shone through the window paper, illuminating the bold type on the newspaper clearly. Report on the deeds of combat hero Nathan. Below it was an old, yellowed photo. The young officer in a neat military uniform stood on a podium. The honest outline of Nathan could be vaguely seen between his eyebrows. My fingers trembled suddenly. The newspaper fell to the ground with a clatter. The flood in 1975. Kara bent down to pick up the newspaper, her voice trembling. He was hit on the head by a collapsed beam while trying to save 3 children of the supply and marketing cooperative. When he woke up, there was a sudden commotion outside the yard. I opened the window and saw Nathan walking toward me, surrounded by villagers. His faded military uniform was full of medals, shining brightly in the morning sun. Ellie. His voice was no longer stuttering, shy, or gentle. When I saved you in the river that day, I suddenly remembered a lot of things. It's like having a very long dream, Kara explained excitedly in my ear. The doctor said that the strong stimulation when saving you made him regain his memory. I was surprised and happy to see Nathan had regained his memory. I should call him Nathan now. Nathan stretched out his hand to me, and I took it without hesitation. His palm was broad and warm, making me feel unprecedented peace of mind. The villagers watching at the door suddenly erupted in shock. The expressions that were originally waiting to see the joke froze on their faces. Oh my God, this idiot. Isn't that Nathan, the war hero? What kind of luck does Ellie have? She was dumped by Accountant Brian and picked up a war hero right after. That's right. I knew something was wrong when the 3 wheels rang. How could this idiot have so much money? It turns out he's a hidden war hero. I heard Nathan has won 3 first-class merits. His monthly salary alone is several hundred yuan. Ellie is enjoying a good life now. It's 100 times better than following Accountant Brian. The old branch secretary came over, knocking his pipe and deliberately raising his voice. Don't some people laugh at Ellie marrying an idiot? Now, let's see who is the real fool. I sat on the back seat of Nathan's bicycle, my hands gently wrapped around his waist. His back was as straight as a pine tree. The faded military uniform was blown by the wind, and I could faintly smell the scent of soap. In this life, God has been kind to me after all, giving me this precious gift, a fool willing to jump into the rapids for me, a hero who protects the people with his life, and a lover who makes me feel at ease. When the wedding procession reached the stone bridge at the entrance of the village, they happened to meet Brian and Diana walking side by side. Brian looked up and saw Nathan riding a brand new Forever brand bicycle, but didn't recognize him at first. This is. Brian squinted, looking at Nathan's straight military uniform and the military medal on his chest. There are other people getting married today. Matchmaker Mia laughed loudly. Accountant Brian, you are forgetful. Today is also Ellie's big wedding day. Brian's face instantly turned pale. What did you say? You're talking nonsense. How could Ellie marry someone else? Brian trembled and walked forward to see me sitting on the back seat of the bicycle in my wedding dress. Brian's eyes filled with tears. I glanced at him coldly and turned my head away. In this life, he got what he wanted and married Diana. He never had the chance to harm me or my family again. Brian suddenly opened his arms and blocked the bicycle. Ellie. His voice was hoarse and out of tune. Do you really want to marry this Nathan? I frowned, not understanding what he meant. Brian, do you have something to say? Brian's lips trembled violently. Ellie, don't marry him. He suddenly reached out to grab my arm but was stopped by Nathan. Brian. Nathan's voice was steady and powerful. Please move aside and don't delay the auspicious time. Brian clenched his teeth as if he had made up his mind. Nathan, Ellie and I had some misunderstandings. She can't marry you. The villagers watching were too scared to speak. They didn't expect Brian to dare to disrupt the military marriage in public. Nathan showed a confident smile and turned to look at me. Ellie, are you willing to go with him? Brian looked at me pleadingly. I met his tearful eyes and shook my head firmly. No, I don't want to. Brian's body swayed, and he almost fell to the ground, staring at me in disbelief. Nathan chuckled. Hear that clearly? No. Ellie doesn't want to go with you. There are many cases of bride kidnapping, but most people don't do it as openly as the groom kidnapping the bride in the street. Nathan pedaled his bicycle and carried me forward. Brian suddenly tried to rush over like a madman, but was stopped by several strong villagers. Ellie, his roar was heartbreaking. Have you forgotten our love all these years? Why do you want to marry someone else? I didn't look back but hugged Nathan's waist tighter. His body heat through his military uniform made me feel very safe. What kind of friendship do Brian and I really have? I didn't see him remembering the old times when he harmed my family in the previous life. Now, he just pretended to be affectionate. The reason he wanted to stop me from marrying Nathan wasn't reluctance to let go, but he simply couldn't accept that what he once held had become someone else's treasure. That evening, after getting the marriage certificate, Nathan and I sat side by side under the old locust tree at the village entrance. Nathan. I stroked the 4 words voluntary union on the certificate and hesitated whether to explain the grudge with Brian. But he gently held my hand. Don't say it. It's not your fault. I understand everything. I looked up at his resolute profile. Then why are you willing to marry a stranger? Nathan gazed at the distant wheat field with gentle eyes. That day by the river, I saw you almost swept away while trying to save a child who fell into the water. Later, when you were delirious with fever, you kept shouting, Dad, run away. I wondered how much suffering you must have endured. A locust leaf fell on our clasped hands. He continued, Then I saw you teaching the village children to read and fetching water for the lonely elderly. I thought even if I were a fool all my life, it would be a blessing to live with someone like you. Nathan. My voice trembled a little. Actually, The words choked in my throat. How could I tell him that at first, I approached him just to escape the tragedy of my previous life? He seemed to sense my unease. His broad palm gently wrapped around my trembling fingers. Ellie, look, he pointed to swallows returning to their nests in the distance. Birds don't ask why they choose this branch to build their nests. Flowers don't ask why the sun shines on them. Some fate doesn't need a reason. A tear fell on our joined hands. I took a deep breath and decided to tell him my true feelings. At the beginning, I did. I intended to use you. To my surprise, he laughed softly. I know, but I believe sincerity meets sincerity. The dusk deepened, and the first star lit up the sky. I reached out and smoothed the wrinkles on his military uniform, saying word by word, From now on, my heart will only hold you. The next day at work, the village gossip was 3 times livelier than usual. Oh, you didn't see it, Aunt Wong gestured while sifting grain. Accountant Brian got drunk outside the educated youth site last night. Wine bottles were scattered everywhere. Sister Lee lowered her voice mysteriously. I heard Diana was so angry she smashed the enamel basins in the new house. Brian didn't even try to comfort her. They argued until late at night. Brian was hunched over at the end of the threshing ground, keeping accounts, dark circles under his eyes. Diana, with red swollen eyes, came to deliver food. The two were on edge when they met. Those who caused trouble in the bridal chamber last night have finally opened their eyes, the scorekeeper said with a cigarette in his mouth, laughing. The bride cried, cursed, and wanted to go back to her parents' home. The groom squatted by the door and smoked silently. This is no marriage, it's pure enmity. I lowered my head bundling rice, when suddenly a shadow fell. Nathan stood behind me without my knowing and handed me a small straw fan. Take a break. The metals on his military uniform sparkled in the sun, making Brian, not far away, suddenly turn his head away. The old branch secretary came over, knocking on his pipe. Look, this is what life's like. Some people just don't know how to appreciate the blessings they have. Diana's crying voice came faintly from the direction of the new house. Nathan and I smiled at each other and continued working with heads down, our shadows nestled tightly in the golden rice waves. Early the next morning, I was hanging clothes in the yard when Diana suddenly rushed in with disheveled hair, red eyes pointed at me as she cursed. "It's all because of you, the vixen." Brother Brian doesn't even look at me now. I was about to speak, but Nathan blocked me. His tall figure stood firm, and Diana's arrogance suddenly shrank. "Diana," his voice steady, "please be careful with your words and actions. You could go to jail if you disrupt a military marriage." Diana was choked and speechless. Just as she was about to throw a tantrum, Brian hurried after her, his face pale and eyes dark blue. "Come back with me." He pulled Diana's arm but got a loud slap in the face. "Whose name did you shout last night?" "Ellie. You shouted Ellie in your dreams." Diana gripped the wooden courtyard gate tightly, refusing to leave. "I won't leave. I must make this vixen explain herself today." Brian pried her fingers hard, sweating anxiously. "Don't embarrass yourself here." Embarrassing, Diana suddenly laughed crazily, pulling a pair of scissors from her bosom. "This is embarrassing," she said, about to cut her wrist. The watching villagers pointed and said, "Tsk, trying to commit suicide on the third day of your marriage. I heard you didn't even enter the bridal chamber last night. What a sin Accountant Brian has committed." Brian's face turned pale, and he suddenly picked up the struggling Diana, walking out like carrying a sack. Diana's shoes fell off, and she kept cursing, "Put me down, Brian, you heartless man. If it weren't for you." The two struggled and tugged as they passed the threshing ground. Diana suddenly grabbed the drying corn stalks and fell into the mud pit along with them. Brian rushed to pull her out but was pulled so hard that he staggered. His brand-new military pants swished and tore at the base of his thighs. "You deserve it," Aunt Wong spat. "You sons and daughters of bitches are getting your comeuppance in this life." I stood at the gate of the courtyard, watching the couple leave in disgrace amid the crowd's laughter. Nathan gently held my hand. "Don't look at me, it's dirty." His palm was warm and dry, making me feel inexplicably at ease. In the distance, Brian's family's noisy voices could be heard faintly, but it seemed as if they were a world away. 8 days passed, and Brian's entanglement with me grew more severe. On the day of the autumn harvest, he took advantage of Nathan's meeting in the county to stop me at the threshing ground. He had a scruffy beard but held a bunch of wild roses in his hand-me favorite flowers from my previous life. "Ellie." His voice trembled. "I know you're back too. God let us start over again. It must be to give us another chance to make up for the regrets of our last life." I sneered, tearing the wild roses into pieces, throwing them into the mud and crushing them. "Brian, you look so disgusting now." His eyes instantly reddened. "I know you hate me, but in this life." "What?" I interrupted him. "You didn't get the chance to kill my whole family, and you still didn't marry Diana. You already got what you wanted, so why are you still pestering me? Are you born greedy, wanting to have your cake and eat it too?" Brian staggered back 2 steps as if struck by lightning. At that moment, Nathan's bicycle bell rang in the distance. Brian suddenly grabbed my wrist. "Come with me, go now. I can give up everything." "Let go." I shook him off violently. "Everything of yours," I said, pointing at Diana who was desperately looking for him nearby. "That's all you have now." Nathan strode over, his military medals sparkling in the sun. Brian let go like a mouse seeing a cat. "Accountant Brian," Nathan said, his voice intimidating though calm, "if you harass my wife again, I will report your conduct to the organization." Brian's face went pale, but he still stared at me. "Ellie, look into my eyes and say that you really don't have any feelings." "No," I said firmly, turning and holding Nathan's arm. "My husband, my hero, has always been Nathan." Brian pestered me to no avail and drowned his sorrows in alcohol all day. His accounting work was abandoned. Diana watched Brian like this, her jealousy burning hotter than ever. One late autumn evening, I returned from my private plot carrying a bamboo basket. From a distance, I saw Diana standing stealthily outside my courtyard wall, whispering something with her husband Curtis in my previous life. He was always smoking and smiling obscenely, glancing into my yard from time to time. Walking quietly around the haystack, I overheard Diana's gnashing teeth. Tomorrow night, the village will show a movie, and everyone will gather at the threshing ground. Find a chance to drag her into the straw shed on the back mountain. I'll give you 20 yuan once it's done, Curtis chuckled. Diana, do you hate her that much? Diana's voice was chilling. If it weren't for her, how could Brother Brian have become like this? She can't have an easy life if I can't get him. I clenched the bamboo basket tightly, my nails digging deep into my palms. Diana couldn't hold Brian's heart, but blamed me for it. The next morning, I deliberately ran into Diana while washing clothes by the river. She squatted downstream, hitting the water with a mallet, as if pounding my head. Sister Diana, I pretended to be concerned. You look awful. Didn't sleep well last night? She suddenly raised her head. Her eyes were like poisoned knives. None of your business. I slowly wrung out the clothes. I heard Brian has been running to the county lately. Could it be? Shut up. She stood up with a splash, water soaking her cloth shoes. Ellie, don't be so proud. You think you're great just because you married a war hero. I smiled silently, picked up the basket, and turned to leave. Sure enough, I heard her spit fiercely behind me. Just wait and see. That evening, the village loudspeaker began playing movie trailers. I stood at the window and watched Diana, dressed gorgeously, walk to the threshing ground, not forgetting to turn and wink at Curtis. Everything's arranged, I asked Nathan, who was sharpening his sickle. He raised his head with calm eyes. The people in the militia company and the police lying in ambush at the back mountain communes say hello too. Are you sure you want to be the bait yourself? I smiled easily. How can I feel at ease if I don't see Diana suffer the consequences of her own actions? Halfway through the movie, I pretended to be in a hurry and walked alone to the secluded toilet. Sure enough, as soon as I turned the corner of the granary, Curtis and another lowlife jumped out of the shadows and grabbed my arms on either side. Sure. Curtis's breath smelled of alcohol. Ellie, we're taking you to a fun place. I pretended to panic and struggled. Let me go. What are you going to do? Don't be afraid. He touched my face with greasy hands. In a moment you will. Ah. Before he finished, a flashlight suddenly shone over. Nathan rushed out with 3 militiamen. Their gun barrels gleamed coldly in the moonlight. Catch the hooligans, Nathan shouted. Curtis was so scared his legs went weak, and he wet his pants on the spot. Another lowlife tried to run, but was knocked down by a militiaman's sweeping kick. The news that Curtis was caught spread through the village like wildfire. The next day before dawn, Curtis's parents and relatives blocked Diana's door. Diana, you're a jinx, Curtis's mother cried, slapping her thighs. If my Goshing is sentenced, I will never let you go. As soon as Diana opened the door, Curtis's father splashed a bucket of feces on her. In the stench, Curtis's sister rushed up and grabbed her hair. Bitch, your own man can't keep an eye on you, but you come to harm my brother. More and more people gathered around. Diana wiped the feces off her face in a panic. Her hair was torn into a mess, and her floral shirt was ripped into pieces. She looked around desperately and suddenly saw Brian passing by the alley. Brother Brian, save me, she screamed as if clutching a life-saving straw. But Brian didn't stop. He walked straight toward my house, holding a net bag containing 2 canned bottles and a bag of brown sugar to hot-selling goods from the supply and marketing cooperative. Ellie, he knocked on my courtyard door with a deliberately gentle voice. I heard you were frightened last night, so I specially. Get out. Nathan came out of the house. Brian took 2 steps back embarrassed, but didn't give up. I just came to see if Ellie was injured. At that moment, Diana's heartbreaking cry came from a distance. I turned my head and saw her pinned to the ground by the Wong family. Her face was full of scratches, and her clothes were torn to shreds, but her eyes were fixed on us, especially when she saw the things in Brian's hand. Her gaze was as resentful as a poisoned dagger. Brian, are you still a human? She suddenly burst out with surprising strength, breaking free from the crowd and rushing over. I've done so much for you, and now. Pa. A loud slap interrupted her crying. Brian's face turned livid. Crazy woman, if you dare to touch Ellie again, I will kill you. Diana covered her face and widened her eyes in disbelief. Her lips trembled, and suddenly, she let out a scream unlike any human voice. She rushed forward and wrestled with Brian, clawing several bloody marks on his face. The onlookers pointed and whispered, some even began eating melon seeds. Aunt Wong commented loudly, "Dog bites dog and gets a mouthful of fur." In the end, the farce ended with Diana being taken away by the militia who had rushed over after hearing the news. When she was sent to the commune for investigation, her hair was disheveled and her eyes sluggish. She kept muttering, "It's all Ellie. It's all her." Brian walked away in disgrace amid everyone's contemptuous stares, but I knew that with his character, this matter was far from over. Sure enough, when I got up that night, I found a dark shadow outside the courtyard wall. Brian squatted there with a few empty wine bottles piled at his feet. "Ellie," he muttered drunkenly, "I know you can hear me. I was wrong. I really know I was wrong." I gently drew the curtains, and Nathan's warm arms wrapped around my shoulders. "Do you want me to chase him away?" "No need." I leaned into his embrace and listened to Brian's drunken sobbing outside the window. Let him howl. Compared with the suffering I've endured, this little repentance isn't even worth the interest. Nathan tightened his arms. The faint scent of soapberry on his body made me feel extremely comforted. In the distance, the sound of the production team's night watchman clappers rang one after another, as if tolling the death knell for the past. Later, I heard that Diana was sent to a labor reform farm for inciting crime. She tried to escape during a rainstorm, fell into a ravine, became paralyzed, and had to lie in bed for the rest of her life. Brian made mistakes in the accounts because of drinking all day and was finally sent to the most remote forest farm for labor reform. As for Nathan and me, "Look, wife," he said excitedly, returning from the county with a piece of paper bearing a red seal in his hand. "The organization has allocated us a house in the county." The sun shone through the glass window on the transfer order. He was appointed deputy director of the County Armed Forces Department, and I was assigned to the newly built textile factory as a technician. On moving day, the whole village came to see us off and congratulate us. The most common remark was, "I knew you two were a good match, thousands of times better than that couple of dogs." Our new home had a small yard. Nathan planted a pear tree. He said it would bloom next spring, and then he would build a swing for me under the tree. Every weekend we rode our bicycles to the river. He would fish, and I would read. Occasionally, when we met acquaintances in the county, we would respectfully call them Minister Nathan and Technician Ellie. And every night, when it was late, I would lean on his arm. Listening to his steady heartbeat, I always thought of the morning I fell into the water. Fate gave me a chance to start over, not to indulge in revenge, but to meet this man who was willing to jump into the glacier for me. The pear tree outside the window sprouted new branches, swaying gently in the moonlight. All the sufferings of the past life had finally become a distant dream.